Welcome to the Gladden Longevity Podcast with Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, where our passion is helping you to become an age hacker. On this show, we want to help you optimize your life energy, longevity, health, and human performance with impactful and actionable information by answering 4 questions. How good can we be? How do we make 100 the new 30? How do we live well beyond 120? And how do we live young for a lifetime? Now, here's today's episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast.
Welcome, everybody. In this episode today, we're going to be talking with Lori Beaulieu, who has a very interesting story, who's a woman that lost well over 100 pounds over the age of 50. And she's actually launched into some really interesting insights around the epigenetics, around adventuring, around food sensitivities and gut health. I think you're going to find this an incredibly actionable conversation that we have. She also has a number of places that you can get in touch with her. She's at Lori, LORIBALUE.com. And she has different programs if people want to sign up for weight loss. She does a monthly webinar. And I think you can find pretty much everything that she has to offer there at that website. She also has Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube channels as well. But if you go to LORIBALUE.com, LoriBeaulieu.com, you'll be able to connect. So without further ado, we'll jump into the conversation. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, and I'm here today with a guest, Lori Beaulieu. And Lori spells her last name B-A-L-U-E. I love the title of her organization. It's called Aging Adventurously. So we may have some things to talk about the adventure side of things, Lori. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that I've discovered. You know, I did change my diet, but without that stress management and living life as an adventure, I don't think I would have been able to stay the course and actually be as successful as I am, because that's the whole body-brain process of longevity, I feel.
Yeah. So talk to us about adventure. What does adventure look like for you?
Well, for me, it's pretty much been endless walking. If I can't get if I have time, I'll go hiking. So as much as I can get out in nature and go hiking. And it's just, it almost like it really pulls in those ketones to get your body really revving and working. And it's just joy making. And I hang out with a group of hikers that like to do between 5 to 10 miles of hiking on the weekends. And if we get less than 5, we're like, oh, that was just too quick. And it's almost like, why bother to do 5 miles when, we really want to do 10 to get that whole body functioning and working. But that to me also pulls in brain function. When we're actually getting out there and utilizing ketones for our brain, you start to feel better and you get that serotonin boost. And that's been huge in my research on just having a healthier hippocampus for the brain to function.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I like the idea of working out and doing things on an empty stomach. I pretty much always do that. I almost do it in a fasted state. There's some interesting research about that. Looking at people that did weight training, they actually trained the right leg and the left leg differently in individuals. They would train the right leg fed and the left leg fasted. And they did
I haven't heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting study. And they did it for about 6 weeks. And what they found at the end of the study was that the left leg got a lot stronger than the fed leg. The fasted leg got stronger than the fed leg.
Interesting.
So, isn't that interesting? So we're fans of exercising in a fasted state. I usually do it in the morning. The day kind of gets away from you if you don't do it in the morning. Is kind of how I feel for the most part, except maybe on the weekend. But anyway, exercising in that fasted state, I think, is good on many fronts. And it's also, I think, good for, building muscle, particularly if you come back and you give yourself kind of what you need to build muscle, whether it's hormone optimization, growth hormone releasing peptides, or things like, perfect aminos with the right combination of amino acids.
Oh my gosh, I've discovered that the perfect aminos is hugely immense benefit, especially for women over 50, because they're having so much trouble with digesting their food with optimized stomach acid and optimized digestion. And I've got a testimony with the perfect aminos that is just stupid. I know, it's just amazing. I just find it amazing.
Yeah, no, we love it. We think it's great. It comes in a powder, it comes in capsules, perfect aminos, and it was formulated by an Ironman who's actually a physician.
Yes.
Right. And so one of the things I like about it is people talk about high protein diets. You've got celebrities out there talking about their high protein diets, publishing books on high protein diets as we age. It's really a mixed bag. When you actually really dig into that, it's really a mixed bag. Yes, we need amino acids to build muscle as we age and bone. Yes, we do. But eating a lot of protein is probably not the best way to do that, because you're activating.
I'm definitely noticing that with myself being 61, and I can't do a lot of protein without getting sleepy. But when I increase the fat, I do better. But what I've been noticing, and what my sister has been going through, she's been struggling with trying to change her diet and eat more low carb nutrition to reverse diabetes and neuropathy. But it wasn't until she brought in those perfect aminos and started taking a serving with each meal that she was able to actually get that amino acid into her brain, start manipulating those neurotransmitters, and actually turning off her cravings and being able to focus and be satisfied and have the neurotransmitters she needed to be successful. I thought that was, if the medical system knew that all you needed with that amino acids, oh my gosh, that you wouldn't even need antidepressants.
It's really great. And we like the idea of using the amino acids kind of on their own initially, right? And it's fine to eat afterwards, but those amino acids are kind of configured in such a way that they're coming in as a unit. And if you eat other protein with it, you start to kind of mix up the unit of effect coming in. So I think it's good to eat the perfect aminos first, and then, start your meal maybe 30 minutes later, combine it that way, as opposed to like doing it in the middle of the meal. So that's just a tip that we've gotten actually from the guy that developed it. So
I believe he mentioned it's 100% absorbable on an empty stomach, but maybe
that's right.
What was the other percentage? 95 if you take it with food.
Yeah, I think it's that, but I think it's also has to do with the impact that it actually has, right? Like there is the fact that it comes in, it has all the essential amino acids. It does stimulate, it has leucine and things like that stimulate muscle growth. It does improve neurotransmitter metabolism. I think the ideal way to take it is actually after exercise, when you want to build something, you've just torn down something, right? Which is what exercise does. Yeah. So I think it's the perfect timing for it. But yeah, that's very cool. Well, back to the adventure. I think like you do, that living adventurously is super important because it's so joyous. It's such a joyous way to live. Yes. And I think if you don't have joy in what you're doing, it's not only is it not sustainable, it's not even worth it, quite honestly.
No, and that's basically what I'm noticing. I usually plan a 2-week road trip like once a year. And I'll go and visit my mom in Wyoming. I'll get outside. I'll work outside. I'll just be more vigorous. I'll be able, my brain is more happy to want to be exercising and to be jogging and everything. And so what I also like to do is combine a half marathon into that. Not that I want to over exercise. I do walk jogging when I do that, but it's just to participate, be outside, get that joy making process, living my life as an adventure that way has been so incredible to just keep me excited. And I remember one time listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza on a road trip into New Mexico, and he was talking about that very thing about we just got to keep the brain growing with activity, because if you don't have the activity, you shrink your brain.
That's right. And it's got to, I think that's exactly right. I think what you're talking about with the adventure is also bringing in novel activity, right?
Novel, different process, and learning new things, like road trips where you get out, you're outside of your comfort zone. Perhaps you're learning new things. You're getting out there and having a different environment. So your brain has to actually get more involved and figure things out and grow a little bit more.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the beauty of as opposed to running on a path, running on a trail, or hiking on a trail as opposed to a path, right? All of a sudden there's more unpredictability to it. There are rocks and there are things you have to avoid, and you've got to maintain your balance, and you're going downhill and uphill. And all of a sudden it feels like an adventure, and you get to the top. It's like, oh my gosh, look where we are, and it's all that joy developing activity. So I think the audience can almost equate, look at your life, look at your activities, and ask yourself, how much joy am I getting out of this, right? And is there something I could do where I'm exercising, but I'm getting more joy, right?
Exactly. And I think that's pretty much where my brain goes. It's once I figured it out that if I'm outside, I always felt happier. I felt better. If I could be barefoot when I'm doing it, I'm trying to be barefoot as much as I can.
Yeah.
When I'm out and, go to the beach, if I'm going to do a hike, it's going to be some time on the beach. So I'm always out there trying to figure out how to get my feet on the ground at the same time as I'm also getting light in my eyes. So I'm getting that whole complex of circadian biology rhythm going.
That's right.
To correct everything at the same time. And that's just some days, if it's just dark in the house, I can't even be in the house. I have to just be outside. So
I hear you. No,
I'll
I
go
hear
work
you.
at a garden or something. But yeah, it's tough
Stifling.
once you've gotten kind of more in tune to it.
Yeah, it's really stifling, I think, to be inside all the time. Have you done much sleeping outside? Do you do any camping on your adventures? Or?
I have done some camping just recently over summer. I went to Rice National Park, because I was saying I drive up to my mom's about once a summer, and I have a tent that I put up in the back of the truck, and so I'll camp out there. But I haven't camped on the ground, but definitely in a tent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
well, if you're in a
that's
tent,
what I like, is being outside all day, just wandering.
right? I met a guy in Florida who was struggling with lots of different maladies, and then he got really interested in grounding. And I know that's something that you're interested in as well. Anyway, he started sleeping on the ground, and he said basically everything was better in 30 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
That
now
is so incredible.
Yeah. So now he sleeps on the ground most of the time, right? I mean, if he goes to a conference or something, he's probably at a hotel, but for the most part, as much as he can, he's sleeping on the earth.
Yeah.
And of course, that's really interesting.
Without a mat, just on the earth straight up.
Well, I mean, he's got something, but he tries to be on the ground, right? So I guess he picks a place that's reasonably soft or whatever, right? Sand, or I don't know what it is exactly, but he's really convinced that it's massively healthful. So tell us about your journey. You started off, you look slim and trim, but you started off maybe a little bit different side of the fence than that, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I actually topped 200 pounds in my adolescence in junior high, and just my metabolism just, was messed up. I ended up having food sensitivities, I believe, to wheat and dairy at the time, and ended up with massive depression. So my mom took me into a psychologist. They couldn't do anything because I wasn't willing to talk. So they couldn't figure out what to do with me. So my mom just put me on the Atkins diet, and well and behold, that amino acids that I was absorbing into my body cleared the depression and helped me drop 50 pounds. So that helped me stabilize for the most part through high school. And then it was like, I didn't know that was something I could do regularly. I just assumed it was a diet. And so you go back to carbohydrates when you don't know any better. And I ended up gaining 225 pounds by my mid-30s, which was my highest rate.
How tall are you?
I'm only 5'4".
Okay, so 5'4". So that's so the audience can understand 5'4" at 225. That's obesity.
It doesn't seem as high as, lately people are getting up into well over 250 these days. So back then, I guess 225 was probably one of the heaviest weights that most people got to. But it always came with depression. And I ended up getting seasonal allergies that were lasting like 11 months out of the year. So I had to end up on immune therapy. That's what they did back in the day. And I ended up getting my allergies to just one time a year, which was in March. But I would always have sinusitis, bronchitis, always be coughing, always had mucus. And I would always end up on an inhaler, a breathing machine, prednisone, antibiotics every season. And I just remember my doctor telling me I would always be on an inhaler because I was trying to figure out how to get off of the thing, what supplements could I take that would fix this? But they would only, manage the symptoms. They didn't actually get in and actually help my body function the way it needed to.
So what was going on for you in your 30s? Where were you in your life at that point that you kind of ballooned up? What were you in the middle of it in your 30s?
Well, I was, I think it was just the starvation diets that I was on. It was probably the fact that I couldn't maintain that anymore.
No, I'm talking about socially.
Socially.
Life. Yeah. Yes. Where were you? Yeah.
So I was married. I had an 8-year-old son.
Okay.
And we did have a new house, and, I believe I was working I'm sure I was working at the time. That was what was happening. But again, because of that, weight, I did have that depression. So
Hmm.
socially, I was antisocial. I was more of an introvert. I was
Okay.
repressed. I had anxiety. So I didn't really socialize much outside of parties for my son or family. That was
Sure.
basically all I could tolerate with
Okay.
what was going on in my life.
And were you exercising at all at that point in time, or you
I
weren't?
don't
Or?
think so because I kind of remember after that, because what happened was I had come in from outside and my husband was sitting on the sofa and he wasn't even looking at me. He just kind of asked, when are you going to lose the weight?
Hmm.
And so officially, that was when my weight loss journey started. I had
Okay.
PCOS. I wanted to get pregnant and have more children.
Hmm.
And so I went out and started reading books, bought an exercise bike, started walking. That was when I started picking up more activity.
So PCOS, just so the audience understands, polycystic ovarian syndrome is really associated with insulin resistance, is a big
Yes.
part of it, and then it decreases the fertility. Of course, it's associated with can be associated with excess testosterone, but insulin resistance is really kind of a hallmark of PCOS, and it can be treated with metformin. Things like inositol work pretty well for it if you're in the middle of trying to get pregnant. But it's kind of a difficult scenario, PCOS, and it can really decrease fertility. So here you are, your husband's saying, "Okay, I think I've seen enough." Essentially, is what he's saying,
Basically.
right? I've seen enough, and then you're thinking about having more kids. So now you start on this journey, but did you really have a clue as to how to go about it? Because that's kind of a big
Well,
ask of
because
yourself.
I started reading I started with this fat-free move. It was the fat-free era in the early 90s,
Yeah.
and it was Susan Powter. So that was what they were talking about. The vegan doctors were out saying we got to eat fat-free. And so I did that and I exercised. So I don't know if it was the exercise, the food, whatever, but I did lose 60 pounds. I got pregnant. I ended up having two more children, but after each pregnancy, I would gain all the weight back.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and the
Okay.
interesting thing is I never got rid of that asthma. And then I gained
Hmm.
arthritis. So I really never got healthy, even dieting low calorie.
Right.
And so I would just do that for the next 20 years. I lost my 30s and 40s to obesity and could not
Mhm.
figure out how to keep weight off. That was the biggest challenge. I
And
would,
so,
you know,
what kind of made the switch for you where you started? Obviously, you recommitted yourself to it in a different way that's actually led to a different outcome, right? So, tell us a little bit about that. How did you discover that, or figure that out, or did you
well,
go through it?
I'm a voracious reader, and that was what my mom started me back in the day was, like Adele Davis. She started reading her, so I just ended up hitting the books and researching and reading more. I'd been
Hmm.
on Atkins again in my 20s, and so I knew that method of weight loss was out there. But when you're addicted to the carbohydrates, it's a lot harder to make the choice to completely give them up when you don't realize why you're doing it. And
Hmm.
so it was the research that I needed to keep doing. I ended up going on the paleo diet. I ended up bringing in more coconut milk. I ended up trying to just eliminate things more.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I think I really read like Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes and then also the Wheat Belly book and
Hmm.
started really getting into functional health and nutrition, the ancestral approach, that I started to really understand what was going to work, what could work for my body, which
Yeah.
gave me some more excitement and kind of gave me a path to follow so that
Yeah.
I could stay focused on going forward rather than completely give up
Hmm.
and just accept what was going on in my body.
Hmm.
And so, and then after that, there was, I ended up segueing more into keto after that and then just never looked back.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. So, you've been on this journey then since your mid 40s. So, really
Mid
kind of
thirties.
mid 30s. Well, mid 30s, but I mean, that was kind of yo-yoing a little bit,
Yeah, that
right?
was the yo-yo section, right?
And then in your mid 40s, you kind of started to charter a course that's been
Right.
more consistent, right? And so that's been for the last, let's call it 15, 16 years, something
Hmm.
like that. So, okay. And then tell us about genetics related to this. I have some insights around that. I'm curious about yours and epigenetics as well. Talk to us a little bit about that because people are wondering, they may be saying, well, everybody in my family is obese and, everybody around me is obese and all my relatives are obese. And, I think I'm just genetically destined for this, right? Kind of
Right,
thing.
right.
So,
And that's what everybody thinks about. And I think it feels easy to think about that too, that, we can't make any changes. But
Hmm.
I also have the thrifty gene. I have the diabetes gene. Everybody in my family's been obese, has diabetes, has cancer. Everybody has a dysfunction.
Yeah.
I've lost my eldest sister to diabetes and obesity. My dad
Okay.
died from kidney disease, diabetes, the whole heart, the whole metabolic syndrome
Yeah.
dysfunction. And my brother was headed that way too. And he did my program and I helped him with his diet. He reversed his diabetes and all his numbers are under 6. And he doesn't have any medication. So he's no longer diabetic. And now he's able to live his life more adventurously because this is what he is doing as well. And so
Yeah.
even though we're epigenetically programmed to have a specific, we have the specific DNA that can get fat, that can
Hmm.
be disease, because as long as we have I like to call it, as long as our sugar switch is flipped on, that epigenetic switch, you're
Yeah.
going to go out and seek food and you're going to eat the foods that are palatable, that are sugar rich, because that's the way our bodies are designed. We're designed
Sure.
to go out and seek that food to get fat for winter. So we have survival. But we could also flip it off. And so when you practice epigenetics and express your DNA and choose which foods you're going to eat that don't cause you to gain fat hormonally, then you can
Hmm.
actually get control of it and reduce your risk for disease in your body. And I think that is so powerful to know that you could take a DNA that is genetically programmed to get fat and actually not express that. So we do not have to accept obesity. It is not something
Yeah.
that is that we have to choose to have.
It's a really powerful message because it's true for heart disease, it's true for obesity,
Mm-hmm.
it's true for even dementia.
Yep, all of it.
People can harbor the genes, the genetic predisposition for this, and if they put those genes in the environment where those genes are activated, so to speak, then those things happen. They get heart disease, they get dementia, they become obese. But if you actually put those genes in a different epigenetic context, right, then all of a sudden they get deactivated and you can navigate life and not get dementia, not get heart disease, and not be obese, right? So
Exactly. I love it. I think it's so exciting to know that we can do that and nobody has to
yeah,
accept to be obese and
yeah,
expect that they're going to get old and die young and have diabetes, because if I can flip it off and not have anything at 61, everybody else can do this too. I'm not special. I just chose to go forward with this
yeah.
information.
I will say that when you're starting to do something like this, there is a bit of a hurdle, and part of it is we should think this through a little bit. Part of it is that you're used to these foods, so your brain is
Yes.
accustomed to, when you think about eating something, you think about pizza, you think about ice cream, you think about stuff like that, right? So part of it is actually retraining your brain to want something different. But there's another element to it also, which is your gut biome.
Mm-hmm.
If you're eating sugary things and carbs, you basically are kind of grooming your gut biome in a way
Mm-hmm.
where those bacteria also like those carbs and those sugar. And if they're
Yeah.
not seeing it, they're now sending signals to your brain, give us more sugar, give us more carbs. So you're not only in a sense sort of fighting against your own neural pathways that you've conditioned to want, let's call it pizza, but you've also got your gut biome that's wanting you to want pizza, right?
Exactly. I called it the fat bacteria and the skinny bacteria. You
That's
have to
right.
feed your skinny bacteria and starve the fat bacteria. It's a kind of a simple process there if you think
Yeah.
about it.
It is, but people need to know they need to know the battle they're in, right? Because if you don't understand the fight that you're fighting, it's hard to win it. But if you do understand that, okay, I've got a genetic predisposition, number one. Number two, I've got a set of habits and foods that appeal to me, right? And even a style of eating and a way of eating and a time of eating and all those different elements that can contribute to this. Like we all eat big dinners at night. Well, that's going to really add to your issues with weight loss, right? So you have to understand you've got that piece going on. So you got the genetics, you've also got that context. Then you've got to understand that your gut has also been conditioned for this, and that those bacteria you're going to have to fight against that too. So to win this battle, you have to construct a strategy that actually addresses all those things, right? So it's, how do I create an environment where there isn't ice cream in the freezer, there aren't cookies in the pantry, and we're not having pizza for dinner, right? Where we actually, how do I construct that? And so you got to think about the environment, then you got to think about what's in the house. Everybody's got willpower in the morning. Nobody has willpower at 8 o'clock at night,
Correct.
right? Right? Nobody does.
Totally
right?
true.
Totally true. So if I have ice cream in the house, I'll eat it at 8 o'clock at night. My strategy is I don't put it in the house, right? That's
Right,
how I
exactly.
win. So you've got to actually be very strategic about this if you're going to win, and that's likely what you did. You not only made a commitment, because commitment is willpower. but you actually had strategies that you layered in to actually, like, I'm going to starve these sugar eating bacteria. And now there are some things that can actually help you with that, right? Things like a product called Mimeo, which you may be familiar with, which basically, Mimeo, Mimio, was basically formulated when they took people that were fasting, and they basically analyzed all the different metabolites that are upregulated during fasting, which, of course, if you fast for 72 hours, it's very healthy for you. Mm-hmm. And so they basically pulled out several different things, spermidine, PEA, OEA, and some niacin, and put it into a pill because those were some of the major drivers of the benefit. And it turns out that the PEA is good for brain inflammation, decreases that. OEA actually blunts appetite. And it depends on how many of those capsules you take, but you can actually blunt your appetite in a very healthy way. And the spermidine is augmenting autophagy, which is the recycling of, old organelles and proteins out of your cells, kind of refreshing. It's like spring cleaning for your cells, right? So if you're going down this pathway, you need to have a strategy. I'm going to orchestrate the environment. Then I'm going to do something like take Mimeo, which you can get at the Gladden Longevity Shop. And you can actually start to have a winning strategy here, right? And that's what's so critical. And then, I think what's cool about it is when you do lose that first 20 pounds, it's funny, people want to go celebrate I'm going to go celebrate with, Mexican food. We're going to have tacos and rice and beans, right?
We're not on a diet. We're on a lifestyle. It's like, even if you go on a cruise, you can still maintain the lifestyle that you want to have and actually still lose weight as long as you focus on it. It has to be, you have to kind of, I think you have to think beyond it's just weight loss. You need to look at your overall goal, your overall vision. If you don't want to get sick, what are you going to do now so that in 10 to 20 years, you're being proactive to turn that disease switch off, which we can do through epigenetics.
That's right.
Yeah.
This episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast is brought to you by Mimeo, a supplement designed to give people the benefits of fasting without having to fast.
Yeah, Mimeo's research found that the human body produces a unique set of molecules during a 36-hour fast. And those molecules were responsible for activating many of the cellular health and longevity benefits of fasting.
With Mimeo, you can get the cellular health and metabolic benefits of a 36-hour fast even during a meal, or you can use it to maximize the benefits of your shorter fasts with powerful boosts in mood, focus, energy, performance, recovery, and appetite control. Dr. Gladden, in the 2 years I've been working with you and the 5+ years I've been listening to the show, I've never heard you talk about something outside the Gladden Longevity line of products like I've heard you talk about Mimeo. Why do you like it so much? Use it and make it a part of some of your presentations.
Yeah, we love it, quite honestly. I mean, the idea of Mimeo being able to mimic fasting, we all know the benefits of fasting, is dramatic in and of itself. And even in the context of if you're eating, and if you're fasting, it even augments your fast that much more. But the interesting thing is that it also decreases things like neuroinflammation, it suppresses appetite, and it increases a very, very important biological process called reverse cholesterol transport. And that's critical for cardiovascular disease, for decreasing risk of dementia, cancer, etc. It's really, it's quite a fascinating product. I've really been kind of blown away by it.
As a way to help support this podcast and save money on your Mimeo order, you can use the discount code GLADDEN10 to get 10% off your order at mimeohealth.com. That's that code again, mimeohealth.com. That code again, GLADDEN10 at MIMIO
Think of it as a way to unlock the power of your biology. And in order to make good on that, even when your willpower is gone, it's really about orchestrating the environment in a way that's helpful. So I would just encourage people to do that. And Mimeo works really well. What about Ozempic? Do you have any experience with Ozempic or any of the GLP-1s?
I haven't had an experience other than my sister mentioned she tried it and it made her sick and she couldn't do it and wouldn't do it. And a lot of people do get that. And I feel overall that if we could use amino acids and protein to get the same GLP-1 activation in our body, why go through and use an expensive drug that's going to give us side effects? We lose our muscle, we lose our basal metabolic activity when we do that. when it isn't necessary. Because if you go on a keto diet, you can still use something that I call the food bridge process. If you're still trying to build in your habits and you're got to get off of those flavors, the processed food, the chemical taste, and you want to kind of have that comfort of those foods, use the food bridge process where you keep everything low carb and you start bringing in higher food qualities till you get to the point where you can get out of the habits you used to have and create new ones, but create that lifestyle that's going to work for you. When
That's
you
right.
do that, you create, you don't have the hunger. And so you lose that 20 pounds
That's right.
right off the bat with that metabolism, and you
Right.
don't lose muscle, you gain muscle.
Exactly.
So I
There's
don't think
another.
we need Ozempic.
Yeah, I agree with that. We see a lot of people that lose muscle mass. We do
Mhm.
we measure body composition on everybody. For us, it's not about weight, it's about body composition,
Right.
right? So somebody may lose 20 pounds of fat and put on 10 pounds of muscle. They only lost 10 pounds, but their body composition changed so dramatically,
No, that
right?
would be amazing. I would love that.
Right. So that's really what we're after is body composition. The problem we see with Ozempic is people do lose muscle mass, and
Mhm.
now there are studies showing they lose bone density,
Yeah, that's
right?
pretty scary.
Which
I
is
don't
pretty
think
scary.
they know I don't think they
Right.
know all the side effects yet.
Yeah. So the GLP-1s, you know, they have a role, they have a place. They do decrease cardiovascular risk and some other things in diabetic patients. So it's not to say that they're terrible, but people need to understand that they do have risk beyond, thyroid cancer and pancreatitis, that you really can lose muscle mass and bone density. One of the other interesting approaches here, and I don't know if you've done this or not, but people are thinking about how do I initiate this? One of the things that we've found is using a 5-day fast mimicking diet, like a Prolon diet, is a really great way to kind of change your taste buds. Like when you come out of 5 days, your taste buds have been reprogrammed, so to speak. You're not as hungry for the things you were hungry for before. And you also start to reformulate your gut biome through that fasting episode. And then you don't have the gut biome screaming at you to eat the carbs, right?
Right.
And so, right. So it's another way. If you're gonna win this battle, and it's not an easy battle, but you can win it if you're very strategic, right? So
Yeah, one of the things that it's been a little bit more out there on the internet, but I use it because it's easy for me to do a fast and still get a little bit of protein, still get a little fat, and not feel stressed out. But a sardine fast, or just tuna, or even using salmon. And I had a client that did that, and she was just so excited. She dropped 10 pounds right away. She said her dog was feeling better. And I'm like, why is your dog feeling better? She goes, oh, because I came with sardines, So she was just so excited. And then that can work for a lot of people. And it does retrain your taste buds. You take the sugar out for 3 days.
That's
and
right.
you just do sardines. And I did that yesterday and completely turned off my appetite. I had 2 cans of sardines with a chopped pickle, and I didn't feel like eating anything.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, people listening to this are probably laughing. They're probably thinking, well, if I ate 2 cans of sardines and chopped pickle, I wouldn't feel like eating anything either.
And that's the whole idea. You turn
Right.
off your appetite, you turn off your cravings, you just squash those Firmicutes bacteria. They were like, what the heck was that? And so, it's actually makes you feel good because you get yourself closer into ketosis. And that's where you get that brain activation and that more joy. So you feel more proactive towards doing different things that can help you change your habits.
That's right. I think the other thing too is you have to, if you're going to win this battle, you have to reframe eating in general. In other words, so many people kind of live to eat. In fact, people will plan vacations around where they're going to eat. When I first heard about that, I was stunned. It's like, really? You're planning your vacation based on where you're going to eat? To me, that would be like the last thing I would ever consider. It's like, I'll figure out something, right? But it just goes to show you how entrenched this concept of eating is, as opposed to, I think the alternative, if you're strategizing about this, is plan your vacation around your adventures, right?
Yes, that's what I love to do.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, plan it around your adventures, and then also strategically figure out where's the grocery store where I can get the healthy foods and things like that.
That's what I do when I go on my road trips. I'll just pull up the natural food store. I'll bring as much food as I can. I usually just pre-cook it and just so whatever's in my fridge just goes into a cooler that goes into the car. And I just get ice every day. And then I'll go to the local store and see what it is that I need any further. And these days, the last thing on my mind is eating out and finding a restaurant. I'd rather enjoy the sunset and have a picnic and just, relax.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think that's awesome. Well, this has been super helpful. Are there other insights that you've garnered in your journey here? Because you've obviously been successful at it, and you're actually have created some mini courses and some other ways for people to kind of jump in with you and learn about what you're doing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I do have up to 3 to 6 lab programs where you can actually figure out what the hidden healing opportunities are, where your weight loss blocks are. And seeing this information on paper is so empowering to let people know. Like if your pancreas is suffering and you have pancreatic insufficiency, you could see this in the gut test.
Yep.
You could see the inflammation. You could see your anti-gliadin or zonulin levels in red. You could see your liver markers in red, and you can see biomarkers that are showing deficient. And so when you get this information, you could target exactly what's going on in your body and fix it quickly, and not have to spend 20 years or so trying to get your body on track and maybe never get there because you didn't know what you didn't know. And so this is so empowering to be able to do that. And I do have like just a 6-week jumpstart, which is my foundations program. It comes with the MRT food sensitivity test, and it tests for 175 foods and chemicals. You'd be surprised at how many chemicals people come up reactive to. So that you get 6 weeks of working with me and then dialing in the diet that's specific to what your body wants to turn off inflammation. So this is how we turn off the inflammation. Reduce the blood sugar, because I do use a my low carb method to help guide people to reduce the blood sugar dysregulation, reset the metabolism, drop that 20 pounds, and then just really dial in the food that's going to work for your body to keep the inflammation turned off. When you don't have any pain, then you're able to be more active. And that's when you really start bringing in that aging beautifully and adventurously lifestyle for longevity.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. The MRT, we like the MRT. We use the MRT here as well. And just so people understand, there are lots of food sensitivity testing out there, and a lot of them will measure different antibodies, IgG, IgE, and IgA, and another IgG as well. And the interesting thing about that is that the antibodies can show cross-reactivity to a food that is in some level kind of hypothetical. Now, if you have an IgE antibody, then you probably may have an allergic reaction to something. But if it's an IgG, it could just be a cross-reaction. And so what we like about the MRT is that it's actually looking at your white blood cells and seeing if they actually are releasing in response to the presence of the food. So if they're releasing cytokines, inflammatory cytokines in response to the food, and they detect that by seeing the white blood cells shrink. So when they see the white blood cells shrinking, they know this is an actual reaction to the food. It's not a hypothetical reaction. So it's a very functional test. So if you're skeptical about food sensitivity testing, we think the MRT is a good way to go.
I've had a lot since I work with diet in helping people into a low carb method for a lifestyle. It's been huge to help them turn off their pain, turn off their inflammation, to really start focusing. Because I even had somebody who was drinking Diet Coke all the time. And she, of course, her food sensitivity showed benzoic acid. I mean, she came up sensitive to that. My niece, she's just living off of noodle bowls and processed food and sugar. And it's, dairy, wheat, and MSG came up. And then I had another client that was, she was just being more proactive, but she found huge bloom of pathogenic bacteria, and her food sensitivity correlated to the actual food that her body was causing this bloom. And so she had a huge dairy reaction that I'd never even seen in somebody else's test. And she wasn't even that overweight. It's just that was what was developing inside before it became an autoimmune condition, which is really fascinating that we could actually stop that from happening. By changing the food you're eating.
Yeah. And I think if you're struggling with autoimmunity, I think the gut and your food is really the first line of defense, really sorting that out. And again, I don't think you can do it in kind of a haphazard way. I think you need to be systematic about deconstructing what's going on with my gut, what's going on with my digestive system. Am I absorbing my fats properly? Does my gallbladder work? Does my pancreatic lipase work?
All of that has to be taken into
and my proteins, am I breaking those down and absorbing those properly? If you don't fully deconstruct this situation, see if you have leaky gut or don't have leaky gut, all these different things, you won't get the same result. But if you're systematic about it, then, that's the strategy
where you get
that
the
actually
success
wins.
and the strategy that works. And that's what I'm noticing is a lot of people will try to do a keto carnivore diet, and then they go in, they get hungry, they go back to the carbs, they try to do it again, they can't do it, they go back to the carbs. Their digestion's not functioning, they're not absorbing their nutrients, they can't get that energy to their brain. And even though they think they're doing it right, they can't succeed. And that's just been really huge in trying to get that habit installed and correct the digestion. I mean, that's the first month. It's basically those food sensitivities, mineral balancing, and getting that digestion on track and showing them what's going on with their body so that they can see it in black and white.
Yeah, exactly. It's very powerful when you do see it in black and white. All of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, let's do that. Right. So, well, this is great. I love the work that you're doing. Appreciate your approach to this. And I love the adventurous side of this, quite honestly, since I think really, why do you want to lose the weight in the first place? Some people, it's pure vanity, but I think really, even if it's pure vanity, what does that create for you? It creates more invention, right?
It creates more ability to stay active, to get up and off the ground. I mean, if you're looking at being over 60, and so many people are dropping dead in their 50s and 60s, and if you want to stay active, you got to look at your whole body health, like you were saying, get everything tuned up, correct it, and then your body is going to work well so that you can gain that next 10 to 20 years of active living for longevity and longer. But if you don't, where is that going to go? And so you got to look for those pain points and decide, if you've got grandchildren, you want to get out there and play with them, you want to go out to, explore Machu Picchu or whatever, get out there and do some hiking. You got to get your body to the point where it can actually be active.
Yeah,
without
exactly.
pain. Yeah.
The other thing I'll mention is that there are some technologies we're working with now that I think are just absolutely phenomenal at actually turning back the clock for people. I mean, like, We've done some other podcasts about it, but I mean, it's sort of centrally reprogramming the aging clock for people.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's unbelievably cool. But I will say that in order to take full advantage of that, it's very important that you're doing the fundamental things of, sorting out your diet, your exercise. Those things just never go away. Sorting out your sleep and your stress levels, for that matter. How much eating is related to stress. Yeah. Right. So learning.
I think it, I pretty much live and breathe it and think it every day. I mean, it's just a lot. You want to turn it into a lifestyle so that it becomes second nature, so that you're always listening to your body. Okay, my body feels different today. What did I do wrong? What did I eat yesterday? And how is that affecting how I feel today?
That's right.
That's basically how you plug into the lifestyle of just living life as an adventure.
Yep. And then when you do some of these other bigger procedures or whatever, the kinds of things that we're alluding to here, then all of a sudden you have the substrate to actually really have that take a major effect, right?
Nice.
So yeah, it's super exciting stuff. I appreciate your work so much. Thank you.
I really appreciate you having me and interviewing me on your podcast. It's been awesome to meet you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, have a great day. Thank you.
All right, you too as well. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast. If you would like more information on what we've discussed or other topics, please reference the show notes or go to GladdenLongevityPodcast.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter by searching Gladden Longevity. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to get future episodes delivered to you and share our podcast or this episode with someone in your life that you may find benefit. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode. The Gladden Longevity Podcast is provided for informational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The use of any information and materials linked to this podcast is at the listener's own risk.